On the morning of 7 November 1944, over Yugoslavia near the city of Nis, a formation of American P-38 Lightning fighters, led by Colonel Clarence Theodore Edwinson, mistakenly attacked a Soviet convoy and airfield, believing them to be German forces retreating toward Belgrade. In the chaos that followed, American and Soviet pilots found themselves locked in a brief but brutal dogfight, one of the only times US and Soviet forces openly fought each other during World War II. The incident left dead on both sides, triggered panic in high command, and was later shrouded in secrecy and controversy, becoming a haunting early shadow of the Cold War. It's the morning of 7 November 1944, and the sky over Yugoslavia is a pale, washed-out blue, streaked with thin streaks of cloud and haze. 12 P-38 Lightnings slice through the cold air in tight formation, twin booms gleaming in the weak autumn sun. Exhaust trails shimmer behind them, stretching back across the sky over the hills and valleys of a war-torn land. In the lead cockpit sits Colonel Clarence Theodore Edwinson, oxygen mask tight against his face, hands resting lightly on the yoke. The Lightning hums under him, a machine he knows intimately by now, the twin Allison engines thrumming in a rhythm that has become almost comforting after so many missions. Ahead, low on the horizon, something catches his eye, a faint white smear, a column of steam rising into the morning air. He frowns, tilts his head, and then he recognizes it. A train. He can see the line of dark shapes threading along the tracks, the puffing locomotive at the front, blasting steam into the cold. It's not the main target. They are looking for German forces, convoys, and airfields, the remnants of Wehrmacht units falling back toward Belgrade. But this is too tempting to ignore. He keys his radio. "Let's go get it, boys." With a smooth roll, Edwinson tips his P-38 over and dives, the other Lightnings sliding into formation behind him. The roar of engines rises as they pick up speed, wind clawing at the airframes as the ground rushes up to meet them. Below, the German locomotive chugs on, steel wheels clattering over tracks, carriages swaying. Then shadows fall over it. The P-38s swoop in, sunlight glinting off their wings. Edwinson's gun sight settles on the locomotive's broad nose. His thumb presses the trigger. 50 caliber bullets and 20mm rounds chew into the metal beast. Steam erupts in violent gusts as shells punch through the boiler. The entire train shudders. Plumes of white burst out of new, ragged holes in its sides. Other Lightnings join in, raking the cars and locomotive with fire. Then they pull up, engines straining as they climb back into the sky, leaving behind a crippled, hissing wreck. Edwinson breathes out, adrenaline still buzzing through his veins. It's not the main objective, but it feels like a good start, another blow against the Germans on the ground. But the Germans are not slow to answer. Black puffs of flak bloom around the formation, sudden ink spots in the morning air, each dark blossom ringed with shards of hot steel. The thin skins of the P-38s shudder as shrapnel smacks into them, leaving jagged holes in wings and tailplanes. One burst detonates too close. "Everyone, get low!" Edwinson barks over the radio. The Lightnings roll and dive back toward the deck, trying to get under the guns to make themselves harder targets. The horizon tilts. The ground surges up. Trees whip past beneath them as they level off, hugging the terrain. Then a voice cuts through the radio net, raw and panicked. "I'm hit and going down." Edwinson jerks his head back, eyes scanning the chaos behind. Instead of a damaged P-38 limping away, he sees a ball of fire, a Lightning tumbling, breaking apart as it slams into a hillside, erupting in a blossom of flame and smoke. "Does anyone see a chute?" he demands. For a moment, the radio is full of static, and the roar of engines. Every pilot silently hopes someone else will be the one to say yes, that they will see a white blossom of silk drifting down. The answer comes, flat and heavy. "Negative, sir." Edwinson clenches his jaw. Fury surges through his chest, mingled with a familiar burn of helplessness. One of his men is gone, killed within seconds, swallowed by a hillside in a foreign land whose language he does not even speak. "Copy," he says quietly. The P-38s thunder on over the rugged Serbian mountains, engines echoing off the ridges, shadows flickering over the valleys below. Somewhere ahead, he knows, is their true target, a German airfield, trucks, tanks, lines of aircraft. Somewhere ahead are the men who just blew one of his pilots out of the sky. He intends to find them. As the formation of lightning skims over the mountain ridges, the terrain suddenly falls away beneath them. Instead of jagged hillside, a wide valley opens up, like a bowl carved into the landscape. And at the far edge, Edwinson sees straight lines and angular shapes. An airfield, runway cutting across the earth. It looks exactly like what they were briefed on, and it's not alone. On the road running north toward Belgrade, a long column of trucks and armored vehicles snakes through the valley, dust drifting behind them. From above, it looks like a textbook target, a German convoy trying to withdraw. There is no doubt in Edwinson's mind. "There are those sons of bitches," he growls. He splits his force with crisp orders. "Blue flight, get that German convoy. Red and yellow to the airfield." Roger. "Yes, sir," comes the chorus of replies. The P-38s peel off. Some bank toward the road. Others line up for a run on the parked aircraft at the airfield. On the ground, the reality is very different. The column rolling north is not German. It's composed of Red Army troops and Yugoslav partisans, riding trucks and tanks bedecked with red flags and slogans. The men stand in open trucks, singing as they roll along. It is 7 November, the anniversary of the October Revolution. And for them, this is a day of celebration as well as war. Someone in the column points upward. The soldiers squint into the pale sky and see the distant glint of P-38s, Allied aircraft. They raise their hands, wave, some of them smiling. The war is brutal, but moments like this, seeing an ally overhead, are a reminder that they are not fighting alone. The song resumes, boots thudding on truck beds. Few are alarmed when some of the aircraft seem to break formation and turn toward them. Perhaps the Americans are coming in for a closer pass, to wave, to show the flag. Then someone realizes the truth. No, they are about to strafe us. Panic flickers down the column. A few soldiers grab flags, red Soviet banners, and raise them higher, waving frantically, trying to make themselves seen from the air. It's too late. Up above, the P-38 pilots have their gun sights on the line of vehicles. From their perspective, they see trucks and armor heading north toward a strategic city. They see what they have been told to look for: Germans. The crosshairs settle, the triggers are pulled. From the sky, streams of bullets tear through the air, then through flesh and steel. Men in the trucks are cut down where they stand, bodies thrown back by the impact. Trucks shudder, windows explode into shards, tires burst. Tanks spark and clang as rounds skip off armor or punch through weaker spots. The column disintegrates into chaos. Some men throw themselves off trucks, diving into ditches. Others stand frozen, waving flags that no one in the cockpit can see clearly enough to recognize. Then the bombs fall. Small, dark shapes detach from the P-38s, whistling down. A moment later, the The valley is hammered by blasts. Trucks flip, torn apart by explosions. Fireballs reach for the sky, sending black smoke curling up over the shattered convoy. At the nearby airfield, the distant thump of explosions rattles windows. Soviet lookouts snap to attention, and on the horizon they see a swarm of aircraft coming straight toward them. "Man the guns!" someone shouts. Sirens howl. Soviet soldiers sprint for the anti-aircraft positions, boots thudding across packed earth, hands grabbing helmets, ammo, belts. Guns swing up, barrels pointing toward the incoming shapes. The AA guns roar to life. Tracers streak up into the sky, red-orange beads stitching lines toward the lightnings. The air fills with the crack and thump of gunfire. Above, Edwinson leads his men down toward what they are sure is a Luftwaffe base, full of Bf-109s and Heinkels, perhaps even a few of the elusive FW-189 twin-boom recon planes. In reality, they are flying toward Yak-9s and other Soviet machines sitting parked on their own allies' airfield. The P-38s dive into a curtain of anti-aircraft fire. Some are hit, jolted by impacts, but they press on. They open up. 50 caliber bullets and 20mm shells pour from the nose of the Lightnings, hammering into rows of parked aircraft. Wings are shredded, fuselages ripped open, fuel tanks ignite. Soviet mechanics and ground crews scramble for cover, some cut down by stray rounds meant for the planes. "Pull up," someone yells. The Lightnings pull out of their dive, engines screaming as they climb away. All but one. Second Lieutenant Eldon Colson hauls back on the yoke with all his strength, but his Lightning is badly damaged by the Soviet guns. It responds sluggishly, climbing slower than planned. From below, every anti-aircraft crew on the field sees the low, struggling P-38 and converges fire on it. "She's not coming up," Colson gasps. Shells smash into wings and tail, tearing them to pieces. Control surfaces disintegrate. The aircraft wallows, then tips, the nose falling. Colson fights it, but control slips from his grasp. The P-38 crashes roughly a kilometer from the airfield and explodes, a fireball rolling up into the morning air. Edwinson sees the plume of flame and smoke. Another man gone. Another Lightning turned into a burning scar on a foreign field. The anger inside him surges again, hot and blinding. "Build some altitude and go in again," he orders. Down below, the Soviets fight back with everything they have. Anti-air batteries track the twin-boom silhouettes and open fire, convinced they are shooting at German FW-189s. On the far side of the airfield, Red Army pilots are sprinting toward their fighters through smoke and fire. Combat alert. All pilots, scramble. For the men of the Soviet Air Regiment, this is no longer a celebration. It is a desperate defense of their own base, against aircraft bearing the markings of an ally who believes he is attacking the enemy. The first two Yak-9s to claw their way into the air are flown by Lieutenant Vasily Krivonogik and his wingman, Junior Lieutenant Ivan Shipulya. Their aircraft bounce along the runway, engines at full power, the world shaking through their frames. As they taxi, Krivonogik peers up through the canopy. Above, he sees the incoming P-38s turning back toward the airfield for another attack run. "Shipulya, faster!" he snaps over the radio. They line up on the runway, shove the throttles forward. The Yaks roar down the strip, tail lifting, wheels skimming, and then they are airborne, climbing into a sky already filled with tracers and smoke. Overhead, the P-38s are diving again, anti-aircraft fire reaching up for them in long, glowing arcs. Off to the side, the remnants of the Soviet convoy burn, black pillars staining the sky. Krivonogik and Shipulya skim the treetops, racing away from the airfield to get out of the enemy's gun sights. From down low, they watch as the rest of their squadron attempts to join them. Those men are not so lucky. A large group of Yaks takes off in a cluster, perfect targets for a squadron of combat-hardened P-38 pilots who have already lost 2 men and are in no mood for mercy. "Get those planes before they gain altitude," Edwinson orders. His men do not hesitate. They dive at maximum speed, engines howling, weaving through the streams of flak coming up from the ground. Their guns chatter, tracers streak into the climbing Soviet fighters. One Yak is hit almost immediately. It explodes, fragments raining down. Several others are chewed up, wings ripped, engines torn open. The Soviet pilots break into evasive maneuvers, but the sky has turned into a swirling melee of metal and fire. All except one. One Soviet pilot spots his attacker pulling out of a dive just ahead of him. In a heartbeat, he hauls his Yak upward, lines up, and squeezes the trigger. A burst of cannon and machine gun fire rips into a P-38 as it climbs. The lightning flies straight through the burst and disintegrates, trailing fire and debris. The pilot, Second Lieutenant Philip Brewer, has no time, no altitude, and no chance to bail out. His plane spins, a flaming wreck, and crashes to the northeast of the Soviet airfield. The balance of the fight shifts by inches. The remaining P-38s claw for altitude, trying to escape the reach of the anti-aircraft guns and form a defensive formation. Below, Edwinson looks down and sees one enemy and 2 friendly aircraft burning on the ground. The fight is turning into something far uglier than he expected. "A lot of fighters incoming," he calls. "Make a defensive circle. We are shooting our way out." High above the treetops, Krivonagik and Shapulia race along at over 400 kilometers per hour, their Yaks hugging the contours of the land. They are isolated now, cut off from the rest of their squadron. But when they look up, they see the P-38s turning their guns on Soviet planes and on the shattered column below. They share an unspoken understanding. They cannot run. They have no choice but to fight. The pair pulls up into a steep vertical climb, noses rising toward the circling P-38s. For the first time in history, fighters of the United States and the Soviet Union are about to engage in all-out air-to-air combat. "Shapulia, attack. I'll cover you," Krivonagik calls. "Roger that." Shapulia races in, sweeping in at high speed, and opens fire with his single 20mm cannon and 50 caliber machine gun. His rounds slam into one of the P-38's twin booms, punching holes, but the American aircraft holds together and keeps flying. Shapulia overshoots, whipping past in a blur, and banks away to set up another run. The American pilot calls for help. 2 circling P-38s respond, rolling into a dive toward the isolated Yak. Krivonagik sees them coming. "Shapulia, maneuver, break right," he shouts. Shapulia jerks his stick at the last second, yanking his Yak out of the path of a lethal burst. Tracers whip past his canopy. He twists and jukes, wrestling the aircraft as 2 P-38s snap at his heels. "I cannot get rid of him," he gasps. "Hang on, I am coming," Krivonagik replies. Heart hammering, Krivonagik dives into the chaos. Tracers streak past in all directions, painting the air. His crosshairs line up, just for an instant, on one of the lightnings he fires. His shells pass just behind the American's tail. The P-38 immediately abandons the attack and breaks away. Krivonagik ignores him and swings onto the second lightning, still hounding Shapulia. He steadies his aim and squeezes the trigger again. This time his shots are perfectly placed. Shells slam into the P-38's twin booms, and the aircraft bursts into flame. It flies on briefly, out of control, before the canopy blows off and the American pilot bails out. The burning Lightning crashes roughly 8 kilometers north of the Soviet airfield. "Thank you, Commander," Shipulia breathes. "You are welcome. Prepare to fight," Krivonogic answers. Both men brace for another onslaught. They are badly outnumbered. But then, like a dam breaking, the rest of the Soviet squadron arrives. More Yaks burst into the scene, guns blazing, scattering the formation of P-38s. For a fleeting moment, Krivonogic feels something like relief. Victory might be within reach. He chooses an enemy target and chases it, the dogfight spiraling upwards into the sky. The P-38 tries to climb with him, but the Lightning is not in its element at this low altitude, and the Yak climbs faster. Krivonogic has the American in his sights. One more burst. On the ground below, a Soviet anti-aircraft crew is still firing at any enemy target they can see. In the chaos, with aircraft crisscrossing the sky, someone tracks the wrong silhouette. Whether it's bad aim, confusion, or over-enthusiasm, no one will ever know. The AA gun sends a volley directly at Krivonogic's Yak. He gets no warning, no call on the radio. One moment, he is lining up a kill. The next, his aircraft is struck squarely. The Yak disintegrates mid-air, pieces trailing flame as they tumble toward the earth. Shipulia tries to raise his friend on the radio. Silence. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he sees the burning wreckage plunging down. His commander is gone. He forces the grief aside. There is no time to mourn. He spots a P-38 below him and dives. He is outnumbered, now alone, and the sky is crawling with enemy fighters, but he still chooses to go back into the fight. P-38s swarm. One American pilot pulls his Lightning into a steep climb, then lets it stall, nose dropping as he flips over and opens fire in a classic high-angle attack. Shipulia has no chance to evade. His Yak flies straight through the burst. Rounds tear through the engine and cockpit. The plane becomes a flaming comet and crashes roughly 500 meters north of the airfield he was trying to protect. Soviet losses mount. Another Yak is shot down. On the ground, commanders are frantically calling every nearby base for reinforcements. In the air, both sides are killing each other with everything they have, still convinced they are fighting Germans or defending against Germans. No one up here has yet said the two words that every pilot dreads hearing over the radio. Cease fire, blue on blue. Racing toward the battle is another group of Soviet fighters, Yak-3s, led by Captain Alexander Koldenov. His formation slices through the sky, engines at full power, the radio crackling with desperate calls from the airfield commander. They have been told they are up against German FW-189 reconnaissance aircraft, twin boom machines, a rare but known Luftwaffe type. Koldenov frowns behind his gun sight. FW-189s are usually used for reconnaissance, not for aggressive, repeated airfield attacks and convoy strafing like this. Something is very wrong, he mutters. As they approach the area, the scene below comes into view. Columns of smoke, dots wheeling and looping in the sky, tracers arcing between them. Then he sees them clearly, the attackers. They are not FW-189s. They are unmistakably P-38 Lightnings. American aircraft. Allied aircraft. For a split second, Koldenov's mind reels. His training, his map of the front, his knowledge of where each Allied air army operates. All of it clashes with what his eyes are showing him now. He makes a decision. He abandons the attack profile entirely and dives in alongside the P-38s instead of behind them. He roars forward and pulls up next to one Lightning, wagging his wings, hoping the American pilot will see the red stars on his yak. We are allies, he thinks, although the Americans cannot hear him. But from the P-38 cockpit, things look very different. There is another fighter, close, maneuvering, unknown intention. The pilot slows, slides behind the yak, and begins to turn in for a shot. Damn it, Koldenov curses, wrenching his yak into evasive maneuvers. Tracer fire slices through the air where he had been a heartbeat earlier. Come on, what are you doing? He growls. He refuses to fire back. In a fight where many of his comrades have been killed, this is a remarkable choice. As one modern viewer would one day write, watching this story unfold decades later, massive props to Alexander. Despite having lost allies, he still chose to warn instead of attack. Koldenov dives away, then climbs again, threading his yak through the swirling melee. Once more, he tries to catch the Americans' attention, running parallel to them, wagging his wings, deliberately putting his red-starred aircraft in full view. It does not work, until he spots the lead P-38. He slides in alongside Edwinson's Lightning. For a moment, the two aircraft race on side by side, twin-boom American and sleek Soviet fighter, engines roaring in uneasy harmony. Edwinson turns his head and sees the yak. His eyes lock onto the markings, red stars, Soviet insignia, not German crosses, not Balkan Axis emblems. Soviet. A cold spike of dread travels down his spine. He looks around. All across the sky, the enemy fighters they have been dogfighting with, the aircraft they have been shooting at and being shot down by, are wearing the same red stars. Everything clicks into place in a single, sickening instant. He grabs his radio. Holy shit, cease fire, cease fire. They are Soviets, he shouts. Everyone back to base, now. Repeat, everyone back to base, now. Somewhere, in a different war, in a different century, someone will write, Jesus Christ, there are two very distinct words over a radio that you never want to hear. X person is KIA and seize fire. Blue on blue. I cannot even begin to imagine how both sides felt over the incident. Up here, in 1944, those words have just been spoken. Seize fire. Blue on blue. The P-38s break off. One by one, they turn west and flee the scene, formation reforming as they run for friendly lines. The Soviet pilots give chase, fury still hot. They have seen their trucks strafed, their comrades killed, their planes destroyed on the ground and in the air. All pilots, let them go. They are allies, comes the order. Reluctantly, one by one, the Yaks peel away and return to base. The battle dies as abruptly as it began, leaving only smoke, wreckage, and bodies on the valley floor and near the scarred runway. The morning of celebration has become a morning of mourning. The day when Americans and Soviets fought each other over Yugoslavia is over, but its consequences are just beginning. In the quiet that follows, the full weight of what has happened begins to sink in. On the ground near Nice, Soviet officers walk among twisted wreckage and burned-out vehicles. The bodies of soldiers who had been singing an hour earlier lie scattered, their red flags stained and torn. Mechanics step around the charred remains of Yak fighters. Counting the dead, families will eventually be told that their sons and fathers died under German fire or under enemy air attack, long before anyone dares whisper the truth. In the American camp, debriefings are tense and subdued. Pilots who had believed they were attacking German convoys and airfields now realize they were firing on men wearing the same Allied label. Names of lost comrades, Coulson, Brewer, the first P-38 pilot who never got his chute open, are written down alongside coordinates over a Yugoslav valley where their aircraft fell. For a brief and terrifying moment, some in the Soviet High Command interpret the attack as a deliberate act, a test, a message, an insult. The idea that their new ally, the United States, would knowingly strafe and bomb Soviet troops on the very day of a cherished revolutionary anniversary sends a cold rage through certain headquarters. The situation threatens to spin out of control, but calmer heads prevail. Washington sends an explanatory letter, admitting the mistake in laying out the chain of events. The misidentified train, the flak, the lost P-38, the convoy and airfield seen through a fog of war and flawed intelligence. The Americans explain that they genuinely believed they were attacking German forces. On the Soviet side, an official account is eventually written and released. Over the years, it's embellished, details sharpened or dramatized to highlight Soviet bravery and American error. On the American side, information about the incident remains scarce, buried in archives. Even today, many believe the full story has been kept secret, perhaps to be declassified only a century after the event. In the middle of all this, individual men carry their own memories forward. Some of the American pilots will spend the rest of their lives replaying minutes of that morning. The thrill of spotting the convoy, the anger after losing a man to flak, the relief and horror mixed together when they realize they have been fighting their ally by mistake. For the Soviet pilots, the Nice incident becomes a story of chaos, courage, and betrayal. Krivonogik and Shipulya die that morning, their yaks falling in flames. Others survive, haunted by the sight of American fighters cutting through skies that were supposed to be safe from Allied guns. And then there is Alexander Koldanov, the man who flew alongside the P-38s, wagged his wings instead of firing, and chose warning over revenge. He will go on to have a distinguished career, becoming one of the most respected pilots and leaders in Soviet aviation. But in the long shadow of the Cold War, one of his earliest, strangest memories remains this: the day he stared down the barrels of Allied guns and refused to pull the trigger, even after losing his own people. The Nice incident is too small to change the grand course of World War II. The Red Army continues its advance. The Western Allies push in from the other side. Berlin will still fall. The war will still end with flags raised over the Reichstag and parades in New York and Moscow. But this brief, brutal skirmish between Americans and Soviets foreshadows something darker. It shows how fragile alliances can be, how quickly miscommunication and bad intelligence can turn friends into enemies, even if only for a few blood-soaked minutes. It shows how, in the fog of war, the line between us and them can blur, until it is only a matter of markings glimpsed in a split second through a smeared canopy. It also shows that individuals, a squadron leader who shouts, "Cease fire," a Soviet captain who risks his life to signal instead of shoot, can pull the world back from the brink of something much worse. Decades later, people watch this story unfold in documentaries and online videos. In the comment sections, modern voices try to make sense of it, to imagine what it felt like to be there. Some commend Koldanov. Massive props to Alexander. Despite having lost allies, he still chose to warn instead of attack. Others focus on the raw emotional impact of realizing you have been firing on your own side. Jesus Christ. There are two very distinct words over a radio that you never want to hear. X person is KIA and cease fire. Blue on blue. I cannot even begin to imagine how both sides felt over the incident. For men like Edwinson and Koldanov, those words are not comments. They are memories. The Nice incident is something they carry inside them. Long after the wreck is cleared from the fields and the last official report is filed away. On 7 November 1944, for just under an hour, America and the Soviet Union, future superpower rivals, fought each other in the skies over Yugoslavia. It is a reminder that in war, the enemy is not always who you think it is, and that sometimes the most important victory is not the one where you shoot first, but the one where you realize in time that you should stop.